Magistrate John Roberts vociferously rebukes Senator John Kennedy during a televised broadcast. Kennedy's composed retort rapidly gained traction online. The atmosphere in the legislative chamber was heavy with expectation, the sort that envelopes a space when all present sense an imminent, significant event. Rows of glossy timber tables shone beneath stark overhead lights, and the subtle drone of recording devices permeated the room, relaying every second to countless onlookers nationwide. The session was intended as a standard review of a recent Supreme Court judgment concerning public entry to official documents, a verdict that had ignited fervent debate due to its potential to curb openness. Few could have foreseen that this meeting, convened in the core of Washington, D.C., would transform into the backdrop for one of the most volatile political clashes in recent history. At the heart of the spectacle were two prominent figures: Chief Justice John Roberts, the reserved, gray-haired head of the Supreme Court, and Senator John Kennedy, the quick-witted Louisiana Republican renowned for his genial charisma and persistent probing. What transpired next not only stunned the country but also set digital platforms alight with hashtags like #KennedyCounter trending globally within moments. This was the instant when a single inquiry sparked a tempest, and a poised, strategic reply altered the trajectory of political dialogue. The Supreme Court's decision had provoked controversy from its announcement. Authored by Chief Justice Roberts himself, the ruling limited access to specific governmental databases, asserting that unrestricted disclosure could endanger national safety and operational efficiency. Detractors, however, viewed it as a perilous move toward opacity, one that could insulate government entities from scrutiny and obscure decisions impacting citizens' lives. The ruling had triggered demonstrations by openness advocates, op-eds in leading publications, and intense debates on television networks. It was the type of decision that demanded examination, prompting Congress to schedule an urgent hearing to assess its ramifications. Senator John Kennedy, a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, was among those assigned to interrogate witnesses. Known for his straightforward rhetoric and knack for dismantling bureaucratic doublespeak, Kennedy was anticipated to bring his distinctive mix of humor and doggedness to the proceedings. Yet, no one, not the committee, the media, nor Kennedy himself, could have predicted that Chief Justice Roberts would opt for this moment to make an uncommon and theatrical appearance. Roberts's choice to attend the hearing was startling in itself. Chief Justices of the Supreme Court seldom, if ever, appear before Congress to justify their rulings. The principle of separation of powers, a bedrock of American governance, typically maintains a divide between the judiciary and legislative scrutiny. Yet, there was Roberts, entering the chamber with the deliberate assurance of a man who had led the nation's highest court for nearly 2 decades. His impeccably tailored attire and neatly groomed hair conveyed an aura of unyielding authority, his presence signaling a firm stance. The Supreme Court was under siege, and he was there to uphold its dignity. The room hummed with energy as he settled at the witness table, his demeanor serene but his gaze piercing, assessing the committee with the acuity of an experienced jurist. Opposite him sat Senator Kennedy, his expression revealing no trace of apprehension. Clad in a modest navy suit, Kennedy reclined in his seat, hands clasped nonchalantly, as if gearing up for an ordinary exchange. Those familiar with him, however, knew that beneath his relaxed facade lay a mind as keen as a blade, poised to dissect any argument with meticulous precision. The hearing commenced with customary formalities, opening remarks, procedural notes, and a concise summary of the ruling under scrutiny. Committee Chairman Jim Jordan, a steadfast advocate for institutional propriety, underscored the importance of courteous dialogue, a subtle admonition to accord the Chief Justice the respect his position warranted. Roberts began with a prepared address, his tone steady and purposeful, defending the ruling as a vital equilibrium between transparency and security. He spoke of constitutional tenets, judicial precedents, and the court's obligation to safeguard public interest. The room listened in deferential silence, though some senators shifted uneasily in their chairs. Critics of the ruling, including Kennedy, perceived it as an overreach by unelected officials, one that could undermine confidence in governance. As the floor opened for questioning, the tension in the chamber intensified, like a tempest brewing on the horizon. Kennedy was among the first to speak, his Louisiana accent warm and disarming as he addressed Roberts directly. "Chief Justice, I'm grateful you're here today. It's rare we have a Supreme Court justice in this room, so I suppose this matters greatly to you." The remark elicited a few chuckles, but Roberts's expression remained stoic. Kennedy pressed on, his tone courteous yet incisive. "Now, this ruling of yours has people concerned. You claim it's about safeguarding sensitive data, but many believe it's about keeping them uninformed. Can you clarify how restricting access to public records fosters trust in government for the average citizen?" The question was direct, but its implications were profound, challenging the essence of Roberts's argument by suggesting the ruling favored institutional power over public accountability. The room leaned forward, sensing the initial flicker of confrontation. Roberts responded with his trademark refinement, reiterating the necessity of balance and citing legal precedents supporting the court's stance. Yet, a faint edge in his voice betrayed a trace of annoyance. Kennedy nodded, as if weighing the response before delving further. "With all respect, Chief Justice, I'm not certain that addresses my question. In Louisiana, folks rely on access to records to hold their officials accountable, be it a local sheriff or a federal agency. Your ruling complicates that. How does that align with the principle that government serves the people?" The question struck with precision, and for the first time, Roberts's composure faltered. His jaw tightened, and his fingers gripped the table's edge. The ever-present cameras zoomed in, capturing every subtle expression. What followed was extraordinary. Roberts, the epitome of judicial restraint, erupted. His voice rose, sharp and unsteady, as he pointed a trembling finger at Kennedy. "Senator, you are plainly ill-equipped to discuss constitutional law," he bellowed, his face reddening. "This ruling was meticulously crafted by the nation's highest court, and I will not tolerate its misrepresentation by someone who fails to grasp the intricacies of judicial interpretation." The room fell silent, stunned by the outburst. This was not the composed, erudite Chief Justice the public knew. This was a man unraveling on live television, his carefully curated image fracturing under the weight of a single question. Cameras whirred, and the press corps scrambled to document every word. Committee members exchanged glances, some astonished, others barely concealing their thrill at the unfolding drama. Kennedy, however, remained unfazed. He sat calmly, hands still clasped, his expression one of mild surprise, as if he'd just been informed of a chance of rain. The contrast between Roberts's fury and Kennedy's tranquility was striking, amplifying the moment's intensity. The senator paused, letting the silence linger, before leaning toward his microphone. "Chief Justice, I'm just a humble lawyer from Louisiana, but I believe I know a thing or two about posing questions," he said, his voice steady with a touch of humor. "And I'm fairly certain the folks watching at home are wondering the same thing I am. If this ruling is so beneficial for the nation, why is it so challenging to explain to us?" The room erupted in murmurs, and a few committee members couldn't suppress smiles. It was a masterful move, calm, direct, and devastatingly effective. Roberts's face grew redder, his hands visibly trembling as he struggled to regain control. The outburst marked a turning point. He attempted to recover, launching into a fervent defense of the court's independence and accusing Kennedy of politicizing a legal matter, but the damage was done. The Chief Justice's loss of composure was broadcast live on C-SPAN, CNN, and countless streaming platforms. Within minutes, clips of his outburst circulated online, and social media erupted with reactions. The hashtag Kennedy counter began trending as users shared videos of Kennedy's poised response. Roberts's words, ill-equipped, were replayed endlessly, each iteration hedging reinforcing the perception that he had underestimated his adversary. Kennedy pressed on, undeterred by the Chief Justice's ire, inquiring about the practical consequences of the ruling, citing instances of citizens using public records to uncover corruption or mismanagement. Each question was delivered with the same measured tone, deepening Roberts's frustration. As the hearing continued, the dynamic between the two men became the room's focal point. Roberts, visibly rattled, began interrupting Kennedy, his voice growing sharper. "Senator, you're distorting the court's intent," he snapped, his tone nearing desperation. Kennedy, unruffled, smiled and replied, "I'm not distorting anything, Chief Justice. I'm merely trying to understand why this ruling appears to benefit those in power more than the folks at home." The simplicity and logic of the response resonated with viewers, and commentators noted the contrast. Roberts, the symbol of institutional authority, was losing his grip, while Kennedy, the unassuming senator, emerged as a beacon of reason. By the time Kennedy's questioning concluded, the chamber buzzed with energy. Reporters typed furiously, and the audience, both in the room and online, was captivated. Roberts sat back, his face still flushed, hands tightly clasped. Kennedy gathered his notes with the same calm demeanor he'd maintained throughout, as if nothing remarkable had occurred. But something extraordinary had happened. A routine hearing had transformed into a defining moment in American politics. The image of Roberts shouting and Kennedy's unflappable response would dominate headlines and social media for days. It was a clash not just of personalities but of principles, the right to challenge authority versus the expectation of deference. As the cameras rolled, one thing was clear: this was only the beginning.